you have heard Melinda Ellsworth before. She is one of our special radio guests. She is director of the donor services at Science Care. Now, don't touch your dial because you think that this is, not something that you want to even hear about. But when we get finished, you will really appreciate this, just as I did. I grew up in a world where everyone got their funeral arrangements made when they probably were first married. And usually whatever the sisters did, the brothers did, the mothers, the fathers, and it was very traditional. And that was many years ago. But as time passed, people who would not cremate started cremating. And then there were some things that came on board that made so much more sense, at least to me, and now to my friends and to my family. And that's why I just have such respect for Melinda Ellsworth and her company called Science Care. So thank you very much for being with us, Melinda. I love the work that your company and you do.
Thank you, Anita. I love being on your show and talking to your listeners. It's a great opportunity for people to learn about something new, something different. And I thank you very much for having us.
Well, it's really my pleasure. And if I think that I'm just helping a couple of people, if all of the listeners are listening, they say, well, I already have a cemetery plot, I'm not interested, but that's not happening now with the baby boomers and a lot of the people in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They didn't do that. And so what do? Well, they're saving their money, and some don't have any money to save. And now funeral time comes. Are they going to get it from their baby boomer children? What are they going to do? Well, they're going to go to Science Care as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to have Melinda tell you exactly what this entails, so you'll see why I am so high and my husband and I are on this program.
Sure. Science Care is a way for people to donate their body to science. It's a great way for the average person to leave an amazing legacy for future generations by supporting medical research, education, and advanced surgical training. So what happens is you simply choose to be a donor, and someone near you at the time of passing calls Science Care to start the donation process. And we are able to utilize many tissues from the entire body and place those tissues with current medical research and training that is cutting edge, that deals with training of surgeons on the newest implant devices, the newest minimally invasive surgical techniques, new treatment options, new drug delivery systems, things that really impact patient outcomes today and for future generations. The best part about this, and we've talked about this a lot, for many people is there's no cost. And there are so many people who go through this program who've come from hospice care. Maybe they've been on a long cycle of care with hospice. They have a chronic illness. That can exhaust the family's resources through that illness. And this can be a real blessing for families. Not only can their loved one give back in so many ways through medical research and training by donating the body, but there's no cost to the family, and this includes cremation and return of cremated remains in 3 to 5 weeks. So that's why I love talking to you, because there's so many people who don't even understand that this is a viable option, because nearly everyone will qualify.
Yeah, you're talking to someone who really has been in this field, and until I met you, until I spoke with you about this service, I really didn't know. The most I knew was about organ donation. I didn't even know. I thought that happened. Well, I guess I realized if someone died, they had organs, but sometimes you just had people donate organs while they were still alive. And so it wasn't anything, it wasn't high on my list. But now, as I'm getting older and I'm having friends pass away and I'm watching to see what's happening and the kids are beside themselves, and I just have to go back to something else. And my mother, and I told this story before, but I keep reliving it every time I talk to you. My mother and her sisters all decided to be buried together, but they had to buy their caskets, and I guess this is maybe 25 years ago. My mother wanted me to go with her to help choose it. Now, I loved my mother, but I didn't want to go do that. But I did as a dutiful daughter, and you go through rooms of caskets, and it was very painful for me, but she did it. And then when my mother did pass away, She passed away at hospice. And the nurse who had been a hospice nurse said to me, because I was in her room with her, she said, I think it's better that you're not here when they take the body away. And I said, okay. And I listened, and then I left. And then the next time I saw the body was in a casket. And then we were at the cemetery, and then the casket was lowered. That was a very unpleasant part of my mother passing away, because I adored my mother. I knew her. I didn't need to see any of that or have any of that. She had paid for everything herself, and it was a lot of money. Now I think about, my goodness, all that money could have gone to her great-grandchild's education. But I would never do that. I would never do that, Melinda. I mean, it's so
attitudes are
stupid.
changing.
Stupid.
Attitudes are changing, and even today this isn't for everyone. But I will tell you that very soon, over half of the people in the United States will choose cremation. It's just the wave of the future. It really started during the recession. Economically, people couldn't afford a $9,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 funeral, and so they started moving toward cremation in droves. And now it's become such a part of the process of people passing that it's much more acceptable. And what we're trying to do at Science Care is to get people to realize that if you're comfortable with cremation already, and so many people are, consider donating your body to science. There's so much need. There's great need. Physicians, surgeons, researchers, they can't do the work that they need to do without human tissue, without the generous gift of every single donor. And so we're just trying to explain to people that this is possible, it's easy, no cost, and it's right in your local area. Our donation facility in the area is in Coral Springs. We can take donors, though, from across the country, and we make it as easy as possible. We help the family go through the process.
Yes, and I can attest to that, even though I have not yet used it on anyone in my family. A very close friend of mine, son, and I may have told the story also on the air, but some people maybe didn't hear it. Her son, who was in his 20s, lived in a faraway state and had a terrible accident, fell down to his, not quite death, but near death, and they had him hospitalized, which was going nowhere. And my friend doesn't have a lot of money, and he doesn't have any money. And she was saddled with this, and it was the thing that I said, you've got to go to Science Care. You just can't do anything else. And she agreed. And to this day, she said it was so easy with all the pain I was in, with all the suffering to my son. She said I didn't have to think about anything. And then, on the other hand, because I've spoken to her but think about this, he could just be in the ground, or he could have just been cremated. But now his body, this young body, is going to be helping either upcoming doctors or other kinds of people to help society. Isn't that, that's beautiful?
It's a beautiful legacy. It is a wonderful way to remember your loved one and to honor your loved one. We have, not only can you or I decide to be a donor, join the registry right now, go online, join the registry, say, hey, I want to be a donor, but we can choose whole body donation for our loved ones. So at the time of passing, we get many calls every day. At the time of passing, or even, a day or two after passing, loved ones call in and say, is this an option for my loved one? Can we do this? Can I make this decision? Can I sign the consent forms? Yes, you can. As next of kin, you can do that. And this is, in many ways, sometimes we have donors who have died tragically, too soon, things like that, and people come to us because it helps them to deal with their grieving process, to know that there is some type of good coming out of this tragedy. Now, another thing to keep in mind, we talked about organ donation, and you can do both in most cases. You can do organ donation for transplant and work with a whole body donor program like Science Care. We can coordinate that. The key is just let your family know what you want, because your family wants to carry out those wishes. That's all they want to do. They just want to know what you want. They will carry them out. It's really helpful if you talk to them about it.
Melinda Ellsworth is my guest. She's Director of Donor Services at Science Care, and let me give you some information about them. Don't put these kinds of things off. It's so nice to just get it taken care of. It takes less than 15 minutes. You just sign it, do it, and you'll be very happy. You can go on the web to sciencecare.com, sciencecare.com. You can call their toll-free number, which is 1-800-417-3747. That's 1-800-417-3747. And you can do that 24 hours a day because we never know when something's going to happen to us. Now, the other thing that we've talked about before, but let's go over it, that if you're a veteran, there are death benefits and funeral honors, and how does that work?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Body donation works very well with the normal death benefits. So a person can go through the Science Care Whole Body Donor Program, and we will procure the tissues that are useful for medical research and training programs. The tissue not utilized goes to cremation and is returned to the family in 3 to 5 weeks. They can still take part in the death benefits of placing the ashes in a national cemetery with honors, and we can help to answer those questions and point the family in the right direction to make that happen. So this way, the entire thing, including the interment of ashes in a national cemetery, is all at no cost to the family because we handle the cremation. And we find that, amazingly, 1 in 3 of our Science Care donors are veterans. They've served in the military. It's really amazing to me. And what's interesting, we talked about a life of service, right? Veterans give of themselves in life, and through Science Care, they can give of themselves afterlife to generations of people that they will never even know. And I wanted to just bring up that story about last week. I was in Florida, in Miami, a celebration of life for a donor who is a firefighter, and there was so much talk about his service to others in the Miami area during his life, his giving nature, who he was as a human being. And I was personally touched by the fact that through death, he chose to give his brain to the University of Miami Brain Bank, Parkinson's research, the eye bank, and also to Science Care, in which we were able to place tissues with 4 different research and training program opportunities. So this person who lived a life of service was able to give back in so many ways because we can coordinate with these other organizations as well. And it's such a wonderful legacy for the family, for the survivors, for the community, for the medical community. It's a great way to give back. I would encourage anyone to go to our website and just check it out and see if it's right for you. Right,
and I would be surprised. Who isn't it right for? It's a strange question, but who isn't it right for?
No, that's a great question, actually, because we do have criteria, right? Nearly everyone will qualify. At this point, the main rule-outs are contagious disease at the time of passing, such as HIV, AIDS, hepatitis B or C, active TB, things like that, or extreme obesity. Other than that, nearly everyone will qualify. That's the beauty of the program, because we have much broader criteria than a typical organ donation program, and our timelines are much broader. So we can accept a donor 1 or 2 days after passing if they've been held in the proper conditions, whereas with transplant you have to move very, very quickly. So this option is available for nearly everyone. I would encourage people not to rule yourself out. We're looking not only for healthy tissue, but for diseased tissue. Because there's research, for example, where they do need diseased tissue in order to develop devices, develop new medical surgical techniques, and things like that, as well as healthy tissue.
I see. Okay, well, let's just think about this. So when someone passes away, the phone call's made, and who comes? Does a funeral home come, or someone that you have connections with, right?
Yes, you call us directly. Science Care is the first call. We will handle everything from that point. We do a 5-minute pre-screen, which is a few medical questions, get the rule-out criteria out of the way. Once we say, yes, we can accept this donor, then we take over at that point, try and make it as easy as possible for the family. So we work with a partner in the local area to do the removal from the location of passing. It's usually a funeral home or a mortuary transport company. So they'll arrive on the scene and bring the donor into our care, and we'll coordinate with the family to obtain written authorization, to get the rest of the medical social history. All of this is done electronically. And many people today are using their tablet or their iPhone to complete the documents and send them in to us. It's very seamless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And the forms are very easy, and then you just keep this in your wallet, and if something happens and, a loved one isn't there, then you are, the people who go through your wallet will see that, and then they will make that phone call. The other thing that I think is really so glorious is, and you've talked about this, is though, okay, so someone says, well, I want to be cremated. All right, you want to be cremated, but tell me, if you're cremated, why can't you also you can be cremated, but you can also donate your body to some sort of a medical, you're going to donate to Science Care, which is then going to get you to, I guess, a medical facility that needs bodies, parts, and then you could be cremated when they don't use something, but they don't use all the parts, right? So then that could be cremated?
Right. So what can happen, the family has a choice, or the donor has a choice, to have cremated remains returned or not. Most people do. I'd say about 70% of people want their cremated remains returned. The cremation can occur quickly and return to the family quickly because it's what we cremate are the tissues not utilized for medical research. So when that donor comes in, we already know what medical research programs we're able to place each donor with. We match each donor with the best medical research and training programs. We'll recover that tissue and send those tissues, or surgeons, doctors come on into our site where we have lab facilities, and they utilize the tissue for their work. So that's how that works. And this way, the family can get the remains back quickly. Unlike, for example, a university may need the entire body or cadaver for a year or 2 years before they can return remains, if at all. So this is one way for the family to have a little bit of closure beforehand. And keep in mind that you can have a memorial service or a celebration of life event with or without the remains physically on hand. We have some people who want to do that immediately, and we have some people who will wait the 3 to 5 weeks when they get the remains and then host a celebration of life.
Yeah, see, that's it, to be however it is. In fact, you just said something to me that someone had passed away, I think about 3 months ago, and I was just told that they were going to have some sort of a memories, celebration. Now, I don't know what they did with the body, but so it doesn't have to be there. Maybe some family members were abroad or something, and they just waited.
Yeah, absolutely, and we find that happening more and more. And it's simply, I believe, due to the fact that so many families today are spread across the country. It's difficult to get a lot of people together last-minute notice. And with a program like Science Care, you can be a little bit flexible if you want to wait for the remains, and that way it gives your family time to come together, manage your schedules, things like that.
It's not complicated unless you make it complicated. And why don't you just let Science Care do all the, as they used to say with the Yellow Pages, let them, was it that their fingers do the walking, right? And
right.
So let Science Care do the walking. And Melinda Ellsworth is, she is a very joyful person because I know she sees such beautiful things happening. I feel the same way. I can talk about it openly at a dinner party. I have no problem with it. I guess people maybe sometimes think I'm a little crazy, but I have seen the other side of it where people stress over this whole thing, and then they have to go to this funeral, at a cemetery, and I just don't think that's necessary. Now, there are people, as you said, Melinda, who have very strong ideas, and I did broach it to someone, and I thought they were going to knock me down because we already have
not for everyone.
And I should just know to say, okay, and walk away. But I usually say, well, wait a minute, let's talk about it. So, no, but a lot of them they've already purchased their plots, I guess you call it. And now it's funny, there are a lot of plots for sale, and they're not worth anything.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't know if you know that, because people are trying to sell them.
Yeah.
And some people
Yeah.
bought, 3 and 4 together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
That's
It's such a change. And I think talking about this and talking about the end outcomes, I mean, if people would just put 2 and 2 together here, for example, think about the developments in pacemakers, in hip replacements, in arterial stents. These types of developments are not possible without the generous gift of donors. We need human tissue in order to develop these types of techniques, procedures, technologies, devices, and to train the surgeons on the use of them. So they're coming in and doing training on these new devices and technologies, and tomorrow going into practice on real patients and improving patient outcomes, improving lives, reducing recovery time, reducing trauma to the patient, and improving life. So that's what this is really about.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And for people who really care about what happens after death, some people, of course, put up plaques in art centers and they donate money, and that's great. But I think it's really important, as Melinda said, that if physicians are working on creating new innovative procedures and processes, they really need to have the real stuff. They can't just use fictitious things. I mean, plastic and dolls. They have to use the body so that they know what they're up against when this procedure is going to occur. And I mean, I've now been talking to doctors. I told you that, Melinda, when they are talking to me, I say, well, how did you feel about your cadaver? And they laugh about that, and I tell them about science care. And I even had one doctor thought it was a good idea that I guess he was going to look into it. I did have something else. Let's see, I don't know if they called you. They were supposed to, but it was someone that talked to me about science care. I guess they had seen the advertising, and they asked me what I thought about it, and I told them, and they said, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and call. And I said, you should do that. And I think the person was dying from cancer, and I know you said it didn't matter, right?
That's correct, yes. We can accept people who have active disease processes like cancer, ALS, Alzheimer's, heart disease, things like that. As long as it's not contagious, we're able to proceed typically. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and the age wasn't important too. I noted you said that someone could be very young or they could be in their 80s and 90s.
Or 100, over 100. The oldest donor we had was over 100.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. If somebody lives to be over 100, they're pretty healthy.
Right.
So, that's a great donor. Great donor.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. It's you think about that. Yeah, well, that person is probably a doctor would like to examine a body like that. And it's like, oh, look at this. And if the person was healthy, it might even tell them some things that they need to know.
Well, for sure, absolutely. And, people don't think about these kinds of things, but the human body is a work of art. It is unique. Each human body, although it's the machine itself functions similarly, it's unique. So you're right when you say using simulations or plastic models, it's just not the same as working with human tissue and learning on human tissue. So important when they go into practice with a real patient that they have that hands-on experience.
Yeah, I guess that is true, and we would have to really, next time anyone listening to the show, talk to your doctor when you have your next visit and ask him about it. Tell him you're thinking about going with science care and ask how he felt or she felt about what the cadaver was like and what he or she thinks about your joining science care and having your body removed for use in different parts. And you said that it's very interesting. I never think about that. If someone, were burned, could they use any of the skin of a deceased person?
It does actually burns. If they're burned over more than, say, 30 or 40% of the body, we may not be able to proceed. It depends on the situation. It's very rare that someone would have that situation, though. So most times we can proceed.
Mm-hmm. So that's really great when you think of it. I can't even see how that's done, which probably would be interesting for me sometime. I'll have to take a deep breath to see how they do this, but just in my memory, in my mind, I'm thinking about it. let me give some more information because get your pencils out, remember. This is Pencil Talk Radio, and we've been talking with Melinda Ellsworth, Director of Donor Services at Science Care. She knows everything about all of this, so if you have any questions, you want to talk with her, you can go to their website, which is sciencecare.com. And we've been talking about Science Care that has a whole body donation program. The nice part, well, for me, the best part, besides not costing anything, is the fact that you are donating your body for something very, very valuable. And there's no age limits that Melinda just said, and you can call. Actually, they have an information booklet. Why don't you ask for that, and it's very well done. It will answer all your questions, and if you even have more, call them toll-free at 1-800-417-3747. That's 1-800-417-3747, and they are available 24 hours a day. And the other thing that is important is that wherever you are in the United States, someone said to me, well, do they have offices everywhere? I said, no. What they do is they have connections everywhere. Isn't that the way to put it?
Absolutely. We can work with nearly every state except Minnesota and New Jersey. They have their own state laws that prevent it, but we have partners everywhere.
And we were recently at a science, I think you had a representative there. Now I'm trying to remember that. But anyway, we were there and we were sitting next to a funeral home. And of course, for me now, funeral homes have kind of been passé, but there were 3 people there and they were really doing their thing. And I said to one of them, do you know much about Science Care? And he looked at me and said, no. I said, well, let me tell you about it. And he figured, what has that got to do with me? And I said, they do need places that they can take the body or maybe have some sort of a celebration ceremony. You ought to get in touch with him. And he said he was going to. And with that, right, and with that, we have run out of time, Melinda, but we always get so much into each show, and I'm so proud that you are there for all of us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Melinda. Great. Bye.